Can MetFix save CrossFit? Now, hang on. I know you're probably saying CrossFit doesn't need saving. What I'm talking about here is not the CrossFit methodology. Constantly varied functional movement, performance, high intensity is completely permeating the fitness landscape and has been for the last decade. Even gyms that aren't CrossFit gyms are doing a lot of CrossFit. But the CrossFit movement seems to be halting a little bit. It seems to be struggling. And usually when that happens in any company, you ask yourself, why? And sometimes it's lack of clarity on the mission. Sometimes it's that the company has been taken over and the founder is no longer there and the passion is no longer whatever. Sometimes it's just a change in direction, a change in platform, or a lack of media. And in CrossFit's case, many of these things could be happening, and it's a shame. I've been working for years with hundreds, thousands of CrossFit affiliates. We've been publishing free content for CrossFit affiliates for a decade more. It's one of my missions in life is to help CrossFit affiliates. And one of the best ways to help CrossFit affiliates is to have a strong CrossFit HQ. But that said, it needs some help. And today I'm joined by Pete Shaw from MetFix. Full disclosure, I'm wearing my MetFix hat as a MetFix affiliate. I'm really interested to know, can MetFix save CrossFit by reigniting it, by reinstilling a sense of mission and vision and purpose, by bringing back Greg, by having the original content? I think you'll find this interview really interesting, especially if you stick right through to the end. Some of the things that Pete says right at the very ending, man, they really got me, man. So this is Run a Profitable Gym. And whether you're running a CrossFit affiliate or any other kind of gym, I think you're going to find a lot of information in this interview really useful as the fitness industry tries to tiptoe its way into the health space. Pete, welcome to Run a Profitable Gym.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
I'm really excited, and I'm really grateful to you for coming on. Now, for the listeners out there, I want to start with my disclosure statement. I'm a MetFix affiliate, and I'm obviously wearing a MetFix hat so that I don't forget to say that. But Pete, you were involved with CrossFit to a much greater extent than I was. You were on seminar staff. You were even a flowmaster. What led you to the MetFix movement? Let's start there.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Chris. Really appreciate it. And what led me to MetFix was it's the mission. It's first and foremost, it's the mission. Yeah. It's very clear. Greg, that's one of the greatest aspects of Greg and now Emily partnering with him is that clear vision and the purpose of what it is that we're doing with the affiliates and the education is to bring health and education through metabolic health and fighting against the people who want to blunt that light, blunt shining a light or darken shining a light into those areas of truth about, health and wellness. And obviously, coming from the CrossFit world and being a flow master and at one point owning my own affiliate and everything, that was the guiding light. We were in this fight to try to sort of change the fitness landscape, and Greg was leading the way. And I really feel like that is being carried forward in the health landscape now.
Okay. I think we need to define what those two landscapes are. So what is the difference between the fitness landscape and the health landscape?
The way that I think about it in civil terms is the fitness landscape is, because they do blend, right? There's a lot of blending. There's massive overlap. And I mean, without getting into, how we define health and fitness and Greg's classical definition is just sort of in layman's terms, the way that I look at it is that fitness is focused heavily on performance and health is focused on, there's an aspect of performance, but it's more of performance in life coupled with longevity. So you want to be able, in my mind, what we're looking for out of health is you want to be able to always do the things you want to do for as long as possible. That's what health is.
That's interesting. And I can remember, I'm sure you will too, Pete, years ago, Greg had this journal article and it was the fourth dimension. It's constantly varied functional movement, high intensity. And then he was introducing us to this concept of time and, multiplied by total time or something like that. And that was not his most popular piece of content back then. And I think a lot of people really struggled with it. Is that kind of what he's bringing to the world with MetFix now?
Is it you're talking about the definition of health when he defined it with the Z axis? Yeah. So
the Z axis.
his definition of health is fitness across the years of your life. So instead of the two-dimensional area under the curve that defines fitness, right? Power output over time. He's added a Z axis and he put age on that axis, and it's your work capacity throughout your entire lifespan. And so sort of what we've seen is in early on, Greg was a huge proponent of this, and he said it a lot in little sound bites, but he dug into it deeper in certain interviews. Like, you remember the early days, he did a lot of interviews with Tony Budding and these guys sitting at the table, and you dig around in those, he definitely expands on this concept, and he's very aware of it, of the idea that mathematically fitness is a part of health, but if you focus too aggressively on fitness in the short term, it can actually be detrimental to your health in the long term. So this is sort of what we're leaning towards. We touch on that in sort of the framework of what is MetFix, like in the foundation seminar that we run, and the whole course is spent sort of expanding on that idea and bringing nutrition back to the forefront. We see that as the total linchpin and the deciding factor as to really whether you're going to age well, right? Which again is part of that mathematical definition of health.
Well, I think, we're going to be pulled in a lot of different directions here, but what do you mean that like fitness might be detrimental to health long term?
Well, here's some examples. So fitness is defined as your average power output over time, or just work capacity, right? So if I get a balance of tests, this is what the CrossFit Games was designed after, right? It's Greg's Hopper model. There's a number of different ways that you could conceptualize it, but testing it with some actual like workouts is a great way to do it. Now, if I want to improve on those from previous times and records and weights and so forth, I can do that a number of ways, successfully increasing my fitness mathematically in the short term, but it could actually be worse for me for my long-term outcomes. So number one, taking a bunch of steroids. I could increase my fitness tomorrow by going on a great steroid regimen, right? And that's going to make me stronger. Potentially I could do some EPO and get my cardio up a little bit. And in whatever combination, assuming it's under the even under supervision of a medical professional, I'm going to increase my work capacity across broad time and middle domains. But I think that what would also be predictive is that it would shorten my lifespan, is if I stayed on that for too long, right? Another example of that would be overtraining. If I have like a specific goal in mind, let's say some competition that I want to take part in, some CrossFit competition, because I'm on a schedule, I need to peak at a certain time. I'm going to push myself with my volume and my lows so that I can come out and perform as well as possible in that competition. And I experienced this directly when I was training for the CrossFit Games in 2020. I overtrained, and plenty of people do this. You overtrain. I had to take several months off of tons of different movements because of the aches and pains that I had accumulated over time, right? So am I getting fitter and am I healthy when I cannot train due to that overtraining? No. So that's another example of like over focusing on fitness. I'm at my peak fitness in this one single point in time, but then immediately after that, it drops off significantly. And then the other example that we really drive home is the sugar and refined carbohydrate intake, right? So layered on top of that is like, I could ingest carbohydrates and take advantage of my glycolytic pathway to fuel my glycolytic workouts and see improvements in my times in the short term. And certainly that could be a strategy for performance if you have a competition that you're trying to win gold for. right? You could certainly fuel yourself appropriately and in a healthy way to achieve those goals. But if you're doing it chronically, day to day, because you believe that the carbohydrate intake is making you healthier, that's misguided. You might be seeing those increases in times in the short term, but in the long term, those are gonna start to fall away. You're gonna end up developing sickness, right? We see tons of examples of endurance athletes, whether it's from like Ironman, triathlon, and the reason I say that is because they're skinny. I don't think people have a debate as to whether or not like a strong man is living an unhealthy life. And in fact, even a guy like Eddie Hall, in his documentary, he admits, he's like, I'm eating myself to death because he needs to weigh 400 pounds to win World's Strongest Man. So he's living a classical, high carbohydrate diet. It's a high everything diet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's sort of this misconception about the endurance athletes who they look skinny, they seem super fit, they're fueling all their workouts with a high carbohydrate load, but many of them are pre-diabetic and even diabetic.
Yeah.
This is happening across all sports, not just those two extremes.
And at every age too, a decade of coaching kids hockey has shown me that most parents still believe this. If they're not getting the kids a 6-pack of Timbits on the way to the rink in the morning, they're like carbing them up the night before with pasta. Meanwhile, the kid's eating nothing but Pop-Tarts all afternoon. Like they don't need to be carved. They need to be carved down,
I know, it's crazy.
It's
I just did my coaching cert, my Hockey Canada coaching cert.
Oh,
and not just last year, and then just did my trainer cert this year through Hockey Canada. And I was aghast. Part of like a trainer's responsibility is like some nutrition advice for the team. And I could not believe what I saw. So the trickle down is coming from, obviously, pop culture and everything that we see in these other sports and the elite athletes who are sponsored by Gatorade and yada, yada. But also the organizations themselves are pushing these things, right?
Yep. All the sponsors are carb companies now.
All the sponsors are carb companies. I was just going to say that the Hockey Canada sponsored, one of their sponsors is Pepsi, which is not surprising. After I read what they were prescribing, I was like, okay, I half expected them to stick to the nutrition, like the Canadian nutrition guidelines, but they go way past that. Like the guidelines are better than what they were pushing.
Yeah, which is scary.
Really?
Okay. Well, sitting with Greg at dinner a couple of weeks ago down in Cleveland, wish you'd been there, Pete. It was awesome. And one thing that Greg said to me that really triggered me reaching out to you and saying, can we talk about this, is he said, I can't improve on CrossFit. Like I'm not going to come up with a better exercise prescription than CrossFit. Instead, what we're doing, instead of competing with CrossFit, is we're building on top of that foundation. And what that's led to, I think for a lot of people, is this feeling that he is competing with CrossFit. Can you kind of give the audience a perception of what MetFix is, where it fits with CrossFit? Is it, a competitor? Is it something that's just on top? How does this stuff all work together, Pete?
Yeah. Good. That's a great question. There's definitely some misconceptions out there. One thing to realize is that if Greg wanted to compete directly with CrossFit, Greg and Emily, they could have. Greg still owns and retains the rights to all of his intellectual property, all his writings, all his videos. You've seen, if you've been paying attention to Broken Science, that we post regularly on the Greg Glassman archive. So that project is in an effort to preserve his original writings and teachings, because what CrossFit was doing was kind of burying them. So we felt, and I mean, when Greg originally sold the company, I'll tell you right now, like the first thing I did was I went to the CrossFit Journal and downloaded every single original journal article. So I've got the whole thing on my computer. I was so scared it was just going to go somewhere. So I'm so happy that Greg retained the rights, number one, and that Broken Science is trying to bring those back to the forefront of the conversation through this archive. And it's one of the main links on the website, right? So just preserving those teachings and those writings is really important. but Greg owns those. And so if he wanted to, he could have just done another level one. But as you know, that project is complete, like you said, right? What MetFix is trying to do is exactly what you're saying, is build on top. From the educational standpoint, what we're doing with the foundations course, which is our flagship MetFix course. It's our in-person 2-day weekend course. And if you look at like the level one, the majority of the level one's educational material surrounds movement. It's all movement based. There's one nutrition lecture. Yep. And then there's a couple of the journal articles on zone diet that are embedded in the level one training guide. What Emily and Greg wanted to do with this curriculum is sort of invert that idea of like, you know, if it's 80-20 movement nutrition at the level one, we're going to invert that and make it 80-20 nutrition and exercise. Now that's, you know, broadly an easy way to think about it, but there's more nuance to it. Of course, at this course, what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate trainers so that we can take them to the next level of professionalization. And this was always one of Greg's major goals, is to professionalize the trainer. And he did that in a big way. He gave people an opportunity to, you know, open up their own CrossFit gyms as an independent business owner. You know, you've been huge with your company and supporting those gyms and be successful as businesses. They can just with their level one, they can go out with some really great education and start making people better at squatting and deadlifting and all these different things. And then, you know, once in a while, you're going to get someone who pays really close attention to the nutrition, and they're going to also get their clients on like a low carb diet, right? And they're going to see immense success getting them results. We're seeing that the functional fitness industry is right now, it's saturated, and there's a huge focus and a shift in the health industry in general towards this idea of metabolic health. And what Greg and Emily recognize is that the two of them they're in a very unique position. They you know, Greg has obviously sort of followed the trail of broken science, right? Starting all the way back when he was suing the NSCA and his fight against Big Soda. And the two of them together, they really understand the industry, what's at stake, who comes after us, who's in the government trying to pass legislation to prevent people from talking about nutrition and coaching movement and these kinds of things. But then on top of understanding all of those intricacies of the why it might be challenging, they also understand deeply the actual science behind the validation of our methodology, right? Not just from the movement side, but especially from the nutrition side and how it pertains to the chronic disease. So when you look at the shift in the industry, like we know as trainers, right, equipped with first nutrition knowledge, second movement knowledge, we can change people's lives. We can reverse chronic disease. We can prevent chronic disease. We can have a major impact as trainers on like so many things. The economy, like at this point, chronic disease is a national defense crisis, right? People, like when I talk to my friends who work in the Canadian Armed Forces, and I know that the situation is the same in the States, they talk about how sad it is about how many soldiers are sick and cannot complete the fitness test, right? This is a huge issue. So like we hold a lot of power as small business owners, trainers, right? Personal trainers at sort of like a core level with our fitness and nutrition. But the problem is that everyone still trusts the doctors and the medical professionals, the highly educated individuals in those fields. They trust those people with their lives, even though we're the ones who have the answers. And so the one large goal of the course is to try to bridge that gap. And so even though, you know, maybe you are practicing MetFix already, maybe you are doing the low carb thing and you're well educated on all the aspects of metabolic health, but increasing your knowledge is going to increase the trust that those medical professionals have in you as a trainer. And that's, I think, the start of that relationship within that ecosystem. And it's going to give trainers huge access to, $1 billion industry. Like you look at GLP-1s alone, like the way that those things have blown up, like that's the same demographic and this that we are after. And it's the same group of people that we are after. So arming yourself with the knowledge of like, what is a GLP-1? What effects does it have on the body? How can your training help? What does a low carb diet do? Like, how does that affect the different pieces of metabolic health and the biology and the cellular biology, right? That knowledge is a really, really powerful thing. If the only thing that it does is give you conviction about what your prescription is, right? Validation, So it's certainly it's a build on top. Yeah. And so that's sort of like conceptually that professionalization of the trainer. From a business standpoint, we had a little bit of a conversation about this, but I see all the books in the background, the state of the industry, all the different years. Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah. But there's a huge opportunity here to add on top of your already thriving or potentially struggling business model as a gym owner, right?
Yeah.
If 80% of the population is suffering from chronic disease, it's safe to assume that 80% of the population is not walking into your gym, right? If you, or another way to look at it is, are 8 out of 10 people that walk into your gym chronically ill? And if the answer is no, it means it means that you are attracting a specific demographic that's outside of the broader population. What MetFix is an opportunity to attract the demographic of people who are nervous about competition potentially, and because all they want to do is get healthier. They just want to regain functionality in their daily life. They want their lives changed. They want to be healthy. They want to play with their kids. They want to do the things that they want to do, go to work without having to think about their blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And so I think, back to that education piece, when you have that confidence, that conviction, you can start to confidently advertise to those demographics. You can start to speak that lingo and parlay that into relationships with the local medical professionals, right? Where they're making recommendations to people to come into your gym. I think that really is the key here. There's a lot of MetFix gyms that are also CrossFit gyms. There's a ton that are doing both, and the business opportunity is cool. Some of them are making MetFix programs like exclusive programs, and they're not exclusive, but what I mean is it's a separate program that someone could sign up for with a higher ticket, because maybe it requires more oversight, or it has more coaching involved, or there's like that nutrition piece that's added into it. So it's another piece to the puzzle that I think really pushes the trainer, the professionalization of the trainer to that next level.
I was doing some research for this interview, Pete, and I was talking to another MetFix affiliate, and they said, well, most people open up a CrossFit affiliate because they want to give the gift of fitness that they have to somebody else. But you open up a MetFix affiliate to help somebody else instead. So instead of making other people like you, it's like meeting people where they actually are and just helping them get a little bit healthier. And that really rung true to me, because I have parents, in-laws who don't eat as well as they should. I'm not going to talk them into thrusters and burpees. Maybe I can, pivot them a little bit away from the carbs. And I think that was really helpful for me to hear. Do you find, like, if you were going to hold up the mission of CrossFit versus the mission of MetFix, where would the two overlap and how would they be different?
I can't speak to the mission of CrossFit anymore too much. If you like, are you, my question to you would be, are you referring to the mission when Greg was there? Was it Greg's vision?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So right now, and I feel for those who are working for CrossFit right now, because the company's been up for sale for, over a year now. And Like, how do you have a mission? How do you have conviction in your mission if that's the scenario? I mean, it's got
Yeah.
to be hard to motivate yourself, right? So the the mission of MetFix is what what we just outlined right there. It's to change the world by educating people about metabolic health, specifically trainers, because they're the ones that hold the key. And in the course, we that comment that you just said, that example is a really cool one. We talk about behavior change, and behavior change is one of the lectures that we talk about at the course, and we do little breakout groups afterwards to talk about sort of the coaching aspects of it. I think one of the things that understanding metabolic health and the details of it is it really describes the issue as a core cellular biology issue, and actually, oddly enough, that gives you more empathy for those who are going through sickness, because it doesn't it's not a willpower thing. It's so everyone who has chronic disease wants to be healthy.
Yeah.
And I think without that deeper level understanding of why someone is feeling the way that they're feeling, why they can't put down the donuts, why they can't stop eating bread nonstop, what, like, et cetera, that understanding of that it's deep rooted in the way that their physiology and their cellular biology is made up, that they're craving those things and they can't stay away from them, is really important as a coach to recognize that, right? Because you're going to make better decisions. Like you were saying, it's really hard to convince someone to do thrusters and burpees. It's also very hard to convince someone to change their diet. Maybe harder.
Yeah.
Maybe harder. So it starts with that empathy, and like I was just saying, oddly enough, that education piece really helps with that.
I think one of the things that I picked up was, people they're overweight, but they still feel like they're starving to death. And it's not a psychological issue. Like, those are the actual signals their body is sending them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a willpower thing. Like, you and I are in good shape, and that gives us enormous advantages. If you and I wanted to, we've eaten too many carbs over Christmas and we want to quit, we could probably do it pretty easily. We'd have a day or two that we felt kind of rough. But for these other people,
me right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Robin brought home cinnamon rolls 2 days ago, and it's just like, this has to stop. For these people, their body is telling them that they are doing something dangerous, that it's a matter of life and death, that are hurting themselves. And, that's something that I picked up from the course, was kind of like that perspective, where for the first time in my 30-year fitness career, I was like, holy crap, like these people really do have it rough.
Totally. One of the things we teach in the course is sort of the overarching theme is that when your body's stuck in carbohydrate metabolism, it's really hard to break free of that, because it's the only energy source your body can and wants to use as fuel. Yeah. So that's partly the reason why your body cannot burn the fat off your body. It is more nuanced than that, the actual biology, because we're always burning all of these things at the same time, but it's sort of a more or less of situation, right? And if the more your body has a preference for and a propensity to burn carbohydrates, the harder it's going to be for you when you stop eating those carbohydrates, because, like you're saying, you're essentially starving yourself, because even though you've got all this energy locked up as fat storage, it will not access that. So that takes time, and there might be a little bit of a willpower component, but especially during that initial transition phase, if you are trying to switch from carb to fat burning, but because there's that period of discomfort that you just described, right? But again, as the coach, like recognizing that there's going to be a period of discomfort and there's hope on the other side of the fence, and like strategies on how to guide them through that, either like all in or gradually, is really, really important, so that people have that long-term success, right? I don't know if you listen to, do you know Jelly Roll, the artist? Did you see his transformation?
Yeah, pretty wild.
Crazy. Like, he talks a lot about like the feelings that he went through during his journey. Like, he lost like 270 pounds or something crazy like that. And I think he was doing a ketogenic diet, and he had oversight from a bunch of professionals, but he didn't do it with any drugs. He said he was taking a little bit of metformin, but the plan was to like get off of it. He was only taking it for like a year. So that's like listening to him talk about sort of the emotional aspect of like weight loss and the connection to food that someone has physically and mentally to get them to that place in the first place is you know it makes it a lot more complicated than just giving someone a meal plan and saying go. You have to have care, you have to have empathy, you need to be able to have multiple tools to lead them down the right path, because one tool is not always going to work either, right?
It's interesting. I did just read an article about him last night, and he was talking about how when he was obese, he had low testosterone, and each was impacting the other. But, I think another crazy example is like the number one diet proponent of all time, Oprah Winfrey. She went from owning a large stake in Weight Watchers to selling that, becoming a huge advocate for GLP-1. And now on the backside of that, she's saying it was a mistake.
Is she saying it's a mistake now?
She is now. Yeah. Just
okay,
started.
Wow. I gotta look that up. Okay. Wow.
I've only seen these articles in the last couple of weeks where she was like, I kind of regret it and all this other stuff. And meanwhile, Weight Watchers is trying to like come back. But what's interesting is that I think every fitness coach saw like, okay, all the GLP-1 drugs, they weren't going to work. None of us saw the rebound effect happening this fast. And so, this resurgence and this focus on health, I think it's not just important, but it's also urgent.
Totally. Do you know Virta Health, the company? No. Virta Health? Virta Health was a company that Greg connected with actually when he first started CrossFit Health. And that's another way to look at MetFix, to be honest, is, and Broken Science in general is a continuation of his CrossFit Health effort that got canceled along with Greg, basically. So he connected with Virta Health because what they're doing is they're clinically reversing like hundreds and thousands of patients, type 2 diabetes, heart disease with ketogenic diet. And it's a really cool, really cool company. Sarah Hallberg she's passed away since, but she was a big proponent. She was actually part of that company, I believe. And they released a study recently about a ketogenic diet as a way to prevent the rebound after GLP-1s.
Oh, that's really interesting.
It's really cool. So they did a study alongside the ketogenic diet. I don't know all the details because I didn't read the entire thing. But the message was that, if you were taking a GLP-1 and you wanted to see success and get off in the long term, the best way to do that would be to go and follow a ketogenic diet. Yeah.
Man, if you send me the link, Pete, I'll throw that in the show notes for everybody.
Totally. Yeah. I'll send that to you. Totally. Yeah.
So, I could talk about this stuff with you for hours. I love it so much. And, one thing that I want to do is kind of bring us back to our key topic here. Yeah. So we've talked about, and you said this without prompting, the CrossFit mission, Greg as the figurehead, owning the original content, and all these things that really drew a lot of people to CrossFit. Very clear mission. Here's the content. Here's kind of like the iconic leader. And those things are lacking from CrossFit right now. And I'm not going to ask if you feel the same because I don't want to put you in hot water. I'm usually in hot water these days. But when I say like, can MetFix save CrossFit? By not competing and by adding on top, I have this impression that you, Greg, Dale, Emily, the team could potentially keep some affiliates alive and maybe even attract people into the CrossFit methodology through a different avenue. Do you feel that way? Is that a sensation around MetFix?
100%, 100%. Like I was saying earlier, the functional fitness, like CrossFit as a movement practice, is not going to die. The constantly varied functional movements at high intensity will not die. Right. No matter what the number of CrossFit affiliates goes up to or goes down to, there are way more micro gyms or small functional fitness gyms doing CrossFit now that don't have that label on their front door than ever before. But that's still all the same thing. like look at all the companies that have spawned out from that movement.
Totally.
You've got High Rocks now, you've got all these competitions. I was just looking at the Lifetime Fitness website. They've got like a functional fitness competition, but then at the same time, they're doing a metabolic health piece as well.
Yeah.
So the way to differentiate yourself in that market, I believe, is to focus on metabolic health, chronic disease, is to tap into that untapped market. It's not to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again and try to compete for the same resources and the same small motivated individuals who are going to walk into your gym, right? The most of the people coming into your gym, this is what I experienced as a CrossFit gym owner, back in the late 2010s. People walking into my gym were looking for my gym, like, for a long period of time before they walked in. I always got really excited when someone came in who like had just passed on the street and they see it, or they're like, hey, I'm just looking for a random fitness facility and I saw that you guys make people healthier. Like, that made me really excited. Most of the people walking in are like very specific. They're like, hey, I want to learn how to snatch. I want to learn how to, I might want to compete a little bit. And you're fighting for limited resources as a gym owner if you're focused on that.
Yeah.
Right. Or maybe you're not focused on that and that's just passively what's happening. Right. I just think that there are so many more people out there that need our help than don't. And for gym owners and trainers, there's a massive opportunity to gain some education and confidence to start not changing your business model, but again, like you're saying, adding onto it to start to attract these types of people.
I got to share this with you, Pete, because this was less than an hour ago. So I was over at my gym where I'm in a semi-private group there. This woman, she's there for her first workout. She's doing on-ramp. And she says to me, I've been thinking about joining this gym for 5 years. And I was like, wow, what got you in, Monique? And she's like, oh, you made an Instagram post yesterday about how you were this dork. And, it's long and drawn out because I was a very big dork. She's like, that was it for me. I was like, wow, it's not where I am, but this guy is completely transparent about his background. And that's why I joined. And I thought, like, okay, we put that message out once. She's been following us for 5 years. And that's kind of the one that pushed her over the threshold. How much of our messaging is actually about metabolic health, and how much of it is actually like we still look kind of, athletic compared to most people. And the reality is, maybe 1% of my posts are talking about the right things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Or the people that are just, we talk about people who are attracted to movement, and it acts as a Trojan horse for the nutrition conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about the reverse? What about someone who doesn't want anything to do with movement and they just want someone how to tell them how to eat healthy?
Yeah.
Like there's got to be some people out there like that, right? In fact, I know a bunch. And what if, like you were saying, your Instagram posts involved some messaging around food, deliberate attention to the food that you put in your body and how it affects your health, and people are attracted to your gym because of that. And that acts as the Trojan horse for movement potentially. Like right? Until you start attracting them, you don't know how many are out there. But what we do know is that there's a lot of sick people, and it's the nutrition that's going to fix it first and foremost.
Yeah.
Right. And that lower barrier to entry. It's a much lower barrier to entry to come in for someone who is super nervous about jumping into a class with a whole bunch of barbells and loud music, to have a meeting and a conversation about their goals and their health and maybe what they're eating, and you give them a little bit of advice and they're on their way, and invite them back next week. Like this becomes a huge opportunity to get people in your gym who would have never thought to do it in the first place. But again, you need to be thinking, you have to have that mindset as the coach, right? I need to have those opportunities in place, whether it's in my schedule or in my business plan, or whether my messaging, explicitly expresses these things that we're trying to do at our facility. And then once you go down that road long enough, then you're going to start to see what's out there.
I think it's really interesting, that we could do a show on that, starting with nutrition first, because, Jenny Craig does not have a problem generating leads. Weight Watchers did not have a leads problem. They had a retention problem. Like all these organizations that start with diets, they're never struggling to get new clients.
No.
But Pete, one of the reasons I am so looking forward to this question is you were as deep as it gets in CrossFit. You completely entrenched. Now you're completely as deep as it gets entrenched in MetFix. What was that personal, change like for you? What was that transition like? What made you make the choice?
The mission never changed for me. And when it changed for CrossFit, or it seemed to, maybe it didn't change. Maybe it just got forgotten. But when that changed, it was easy for me because I was already set in my mission. And there was just this other thing, Broken Science and MetFix, with the original leader and the original visionary, right? And him and Emily together, absolute powerhouse. And I'm just like, it seems obvious, right? So for me, the transition was pretty easy. I mean, there's personal relationships, obviously, that I've built at that company. So there's people that I don't see anymore that I really like and miss, but, I try to keep in touch with them. But, from a mission focused standpoint, that was an easy decision for me to make.
That was amazing, Pete. Thank you. Yeah, it sounded like something Greg would say. Honestly, it was like, it's so genius that you wonder, like, well, that seems simple. Why didn't I think of that before? But that is the mark of genius. Pete, thanks so much for doing this with us. As much I do get attacked sometimes for like hating CrossFit. That's not the truth. It's actually the opposite. I want to do anything it takes to save CrossFit. Maybe not save the company the way it is, but the methodology is worth saving. The material is worth saving, and definitely the mission. And absolutely. I think its best hope is MetFix now.
Oh, really appreciate that, Chris. Hey, thanks so much for your time. And hey, we got to get together soon. We're in the same province in Canada, so we're not that far from each other. We're far enough, though.
Yeah, that's a big province, but still, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, Pete, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. So I'd love you to tell people like where they can follow, MetFix on social media and how they can contact you directly.
Yeah, great. Well, and maybe I can even give you those direct links to the social media and Instagram and stuff, and you can share that.
Please do.
Broadly. But we've got, Broken Science and MetFix by BSI. So BSI is Broken Science Initiative. So all of our Instagram and X handles for MetFix is MetFix by BSI. We're on Instagram for both that and for Broken Science Initiative. If you go to brokenscienceinitiative.org, that's the main website. MetFix.org just directly links you to the MetFix page. It's embedded on that website. You guys can get tons of information on that site. It's endless. It's an endless resource of like archives and education. We're doing tons of online classes that are in development. So we've got sort of our in-person flagship course that will continue and sort of stand alone at this point in time, but we're in constant development of online resources. So we're trying to make a more accessible version of this education that we're offering online. And we've got like type 2 diabetes course. We've got critical thinking course. We're going to have first responders. We've got, we're going to have a what is MetFix metabolic flexibility course, reactive oxygen species, like the list goes on and on and on. So we're going to keep an eye out for that. And on YouTube as well. On YouTube, we've got regular free live shows on YouTube from the Medical Society, but also Dale, who you had mentioned, Dale King, our head of affiliates. Dale does a regular show. I think it's called The Daily Fix, which is a play on our daily meal workout and article publication. And he interviews affiliate owners regularly. He should actually have you on. So if people are interested in hearing from affiliate owners, that's a great place to go, is to go to the YouTube page and listen to some of the interviews that Dale does with the MetFix affiliate owners.
That's super smart. Yeah.
Well, Pete, thanks again, man. And good luck digging out from this snow.
Hey, appreciate it. Thanks, Chris.
All right.